Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pianist Academy and another live stream, masterclass, and hopefully some of a Q&A session today. Good to see so many friends. Let's see. Lots of my favorite people are here. Jess, welcome. Noteworthy, welcome. Rob, hello. Hello. And C Drive, Alexis. We're going to hear some from Alexis today. Whitney, welcome. Bedlington Groomer, hello, hello. Lauri, hello. We're also going to hear from Lauri today, too. June, welcome. Newt Boy, welcome. Bethany, welcome. Great to see you. Hey, in the chat, I have a quick question for those of you here. And Jess, spelling, yes. Well, grab your coffee. Grab your coffee and settle in. Oh, Sinden, I actually wanted to ask you, Sinden, because I know you sent me a message, and I sent one back, but it was through Dropbox, and I don't know if you received it. So could you let me know if you got my message back? Because I couldn't access the file you sent me. Otherwise, I would have had it ready to go today to share. So hopefully it didn't go to your junk mail or something like that. If it did, we can figure out how I can talk with you about your question. Nancy. Hello, Nancy. So I had a quick question for everybody. In the chat today, maybe this is a new YouTube update. Are you seeing little crowns with numbers next to them? Or is that just me? Is everybody seeing that? It looks like C Drive said yes, okay. Well, really cool. So those are top fans. So awesome. Jess, noteworthy. And let's see, Sinden, you're a top fan. And who else was on here? Rob Harrington. Cool. Well, that's a really cool thing to see. So congrats to those of you that are involved here on the channel. I really, really appreciate it. And I know many of others of you should all have it, because I see so many of you here on the live streams. You should all have a top fan logo, all of you that are tuned in. Yes, so Sinden, yeah, please, if you could actually send me I'll send you an email. I don't know if I got your email address. I don't know if it shared it with me via the Dropbox link. If you could, or you could even, I know we talk sometimes on Facebook. You could send me a message on Facebook, or you could send me an email, and then we can work out how to get your file, because I said you sent some Mozart over, but I couldn't see it. And evidently you couldn't hear from me either. Hello, Antonio. Bethany, you're not seeing it. Yes, I guess update your app. And C Drive said, the more you post, the more points you get, which leads to a crown. I wish there was something more than a crown. Hey, hello, Johan. I've had a couple ideas floating around, and all of you, before we get into the playing today, just to make Alexis nervous before we hear from her, I have been throwing around some ideas about contacting a couple companies to do some partnerships, but something that'll help, actually help everybody here. Something like talking with Henley, the music publisher. And maybe if there's a way that either on live streams or certain events or certain videos, there could be a score giveaway. Would people be interested in something like that? Yeah. Or if there's another company that's music, piano, classical piano especially related. Do you have any ideas of places you'd like me to reach out to do some of that stuff? Newt Boy, you said yes. Alexis, yes. Noteworthy, always. C Drive said Nancy stole your crown. Oh, Alexis, you said you've been so nervous counting the days down. Okay, we'll jump in. Send in. You say Henley is good. Okay, maybe a company like that. I'll reach out to them and see what we can do to get started with something like this. I think that would be really cool to share with everybody on the channel. And especially those of you that are really plugged in. And if you're not really plugged in and you see this later on a replay, the more you stay plugged in with the channel, the more opportunities you'll have to do something like that. Speaking of which, I'm going to be, if you haven't signed up for my email list, I believe there's a link to do that in the description of this video. Do that because this afternoon, every time I post a new arrangement on my other channel, I do a sheet music giveaway. And instead of doing it via YouTube community on the other channel, because the community has very, very limited reach, I'm going to be doing that via my email list. So if you want to be included in that sheet music giveaway, I can't tell you what it is because that's part of the game. But I'll be sending that email out probably this afternoon. And the new arrangement will post on Friday. So anyway, if you're not signed up, sign up. I send out emails about both my new music and Pianist Academy related stuff. Okay, all that said, let's dive into hearing some music. Alexis sent over a partial performance of Liszt's third Liebestraum. It's something like the first 30-ish, 35, almost 40 measures. Yeah, so we're going to take a listen to that, and we're going to chat about it. Hello, Lisa. Welcome. Alexis, I was so excited that you sent something in because we've been chatting about the music you're working on, I feel like, for a really long time. So this is wonderful. Okay, let me get that queued up, and then we're going to take a listen. Okay, I think it's ready to go. All right, here we go. Here is Alexis playing Liszt's Liebestraum number 3. Okay. Let's give Alexis a round of applause. Yes. Yes. Very nice work, Alexis. That deserves, yeah, here it comes. And Lauri said, beautiful playing. And great applause from C Drive. Whitney, beautiful, so beautiful. Awesome. Newt Boy gives you a congrats. Bethany, too. Good stuff. Good stuff. Noteworthy says, if you could applaud, you would. Andrew, welcome, Andrew. Dith, I don't think I got to say hello to you either, but Dith, yeah. It's a beautiful piece of music, Alexis. Well done. So, Alexis, can you share with us, how long have you been working on this piece? You, from what I remember, you have had some other pretty challenging repertoire that you've worked on maybe over the last year that we've chatted on these live streams. So when did you start this piece? How long have you been working on it? And we'll go from there. Oh, Rosie says, sorry, I'm early. And Lisa says, just beautiful, wonderful. Alexis, 2 to 3 weeks. Great, great progress in 2 to 3 weeks. Really, really. So congrats on that. Okay. let me first let's go over a couple things that are really good, Alexis, and then we're going to dive into some ways that we can continue to improve on this, okay? Oh, so you say you kind of rushed learning it. Okay. There's always time to fix that, so no worries. All right. So first of all, Alexis, your hands and your arms, the whole playing mechanism is so relaxed. That's really, really wonderful. It seems like it is. I love some of the movements that you're making in the left hand and a little bit in the right hand. The right hand has a little bit more to do, and it stays in one place in this piece. But generally, overall, that seemed really, really good. So congratulations on that. You have done some good work, too, on feeling positions in the right hand especially. And I think that's going to make what we work on today even easier for you, because you've experimented with a bit of speed and just moving from one chord position to another chord position quickly. The things that I'd like to work with you today on, I think are going to boil down to 3 categories. We're going to start with the easiest one. Here's a little bit of the score for everybody. The easiest one is just making sure that we do pedal where the pedal is marked or where the harmony is changing if you don't have pedal markings on your score. Alexis, sometimes I saw your foot move, but very little changed in the pedal. And sometimes I saw your foot not move at all when it should have been. So in both of those cases, and first of all, in the cases where your foot is moving, let's be sure that when you do release or you intend to release the pedal, that we're letting it go far enough up that the dampers are actually doing some work for us, and that the pedal sits released, or the dampers sit on the strings long enough. For example, second bar. I know I don't have a pedal camera, but the pedal needs to remain up for, considering the speed of the piece, a fairly lengthy amount of time in order to do the job. And if we don't let the pedal release for long enough, let's see if there's a bigger change in harmony from here. There we go. I did a partial pedal change because it was too fast and it wasn't lifted all the way. And so we started to hear that blur come together. Anytime we're hearing, I shouldn't say anytime with this piece, because there are moments where we actually intentionally blur a couple notes. But most of the time, if we're hearing blur, we want to get rid of that. So Alexis, pay attention to where those pedals are changing. Do you have a score that has this? This is a Hungarian score. And the pedal seems, the markings at the top are pretty good. But do you have a score that has pedal markings, Alexis? And I Love Bach gave you a round of applause. Very nice. You say, clearly not enough German words for the tempo marking. That's funny. Okay, so Alexis, every time the harmony changes. Let me highlight a couple of those for us while we're talking through the piece. So at the beginning, these are given to us. We're in A flat. We don't pedal in the middle of the bar. The harmony doesn't change. But second bar, yes. Third bar, yes. New chord. This is one occasion, this half step from C to D and then back down, where the blur is okay. We want to leave that blur. We don't want to cut off and lose the sustain of the low F at the beginning of the bar. So we do blur that. That one's fine. We're going to come back to how to make it more clear, even more clear, in one of the next steps we talk about. Next bar 4. And then, let's see. So new pedal in bar 5. And then let's use 2 pedals there, 5 in the middle of 5. new pedal in 6. Then it says always pedal. Well, that really just means follow the guidelines that were just given. We don't leave the pedal down for here in perpetuity, but we do leave it down all through 6 and 7 because we have the same harmony. New pedal, new pedal. And then we'll have, a new pedal in measure 9. And then I would do, let's say new pedal, new pedal, new pedal. And if we lose some of the low F at the beginning of 9, that's okay. We want to keep the melody really clean here. And then there's a new pedal at 10. No new pedals the rest of the bar, and then just like before, 2 pedals. Yeah, so Becky, you say how to access that sheet music. It is on IMSLP. The edition is out of Budapest. Yeah, I know it's on there. That's where I pulled it from. Let's keep going. Lauri, you have a question. What is the abbreviation TEN period in the beginning of bar 10? Let's go back there. That means tenuto. Instead of having the line, we have 2 markings from Liszt. Both an accent on the F and a tenuto. He probably could have gotten away with one marking or the other. But tenuto is to hold. Tenuto is, think of it like an accent with time in this case. So as we're getting out of measure 9 and going into measure 10, so that's out of tempo a little bit. I think it's a good idea to take it out of tempo a little bit. And most tenuto are just going to have a tiny bit of extra rubato on that note. Hello, Lewis. Thanks. Rhodesy, similar to the Aeolian harp etude. There's some. You could say that. So Alexis, I'm not going to keep going with the pedal markings. Because they're all going to continue to follow the method that we just laid out. So anytime there's a new harmony, pay attention to that, take a new pedal change. And if you catch your foot not doing anything, take a good look and listen at what's going on to make sure we keep things really nice and clear. Now, the next step is going to help you with some of that. Seth, I am not able to pass the knee test right now, and I usually actually can't. Seth's asking about my position and posture at the bench and at the keyboard. I am sitting a lot closer. I usually have to in order to write on the score and to talk into the microphone. There are all kinds of compromises I need to make to do that. So no, I would never perform this distance away. This is way too close. It's actually uncomfortably close for me, but it's just what I have to do to be here talking with all of you. Okay. So, Alexis, let's talk about slowing down the tempo and combining that with making sure that we understand 6/4. Not just that there are 6 beats in the bar. I'm sure you get that. But what is the subdivision of 6/4? Is 6/4, let's start with this. Anybody can answer. Is 6/4 a simple meter or compound meter? And then beyond that, what does simple meter versus compound meter mean? This vote is for compound. This says 2 triplets. Bethany says compound. Interesting. I think my reaction maybe gave away. We can be feeling, let's talk about this in 2 ways, because the first way that I want to highlight 6/4 is that we are truly feeling the quarter note and not a long group of eighth notes. Hey, Dith, it's not wrong. It's not actually wrong. We do want to feel the bars eventually in halves. So 3/4 and 3/4. And Liszt has written that for us. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sure. But what we don't want to have happen is that within those groups of 3 beats that we lose the sense that the pulse is truly the quarter note. Alexis, do you have, is there a pianist that you've been listening to perform this piece? Or are there a couple? Are there a couple recordings that you like? If you could share that. I'm obviously not familiar with everybody that's played it, but if you have some similar ones then I can that I know about, I can explain a couple things maybe about them. Well, compound. So Bethany, you saying compound? Compound means that the subdivision is within 3 instead of 2. And the point I'm trying to drive home is to not let 2/8 notes per quarter get pushed to this side. Okay, Alexis. So we're going to bring the tempo down and we're going to really count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. We can take the tempo. This is down only a little bit too slow, I would say. Only a little bit. But we want to make sure that we're feeling 1, 2, 3. So there is a strong 1 followed by a lesser 2, 3. But what it's not is 1, 2. That's pulling our rhythm apart, and it's not obeying the 8th notes. The 8th rests that are here, that are all over those bars, right? The 8th rests are taking too long, and then we're rushing through the 8th notes following. Yeah? And the potential is that if we only count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with groups of 3, subdivisions of 3, that we're not truly feeling that these 8ths aren't taking off and going a very different speed or different rhythm. Keep all of your 8th notes truly 8th notes. Yeah? And Newt Boy says, yes, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and... Yes. Because of that, I still tend to think of this as simple meter, not compound meter. Because compound meter would be a division within the beat into 3. So when we get 6/8, for example, our main beat is 3 eighth notes long, or a dotted quarter note long. Right, that's our main pulse. 9/8. Again, our main beat is 3. If we're in... Let's leave it there so we don't get confused. So, sure, in 6/4, we do have a division of 3, 2 divisions of 3 across the bar. And it will be good to feel that eventually because the phrases are written with that division. But we can't let the big division of 3 pull us out of making sure that we actually know 1, 2, 3, 2. Keeping these even. And this is also, Alexis, going to fix another little bit of a problem that we had with our rhythms. I'm going to clear all of this. So sometimes, Alexis, when you had quarter notes like there, The ones I'm circling in 2 and 3 and 4. I believe what you played was a dotted quarter. The quarter note got shifted over to here and got shifted into the middle. So an eighth note. Yeah, yep. Not the one in the middle of 4. That one's right in the middle of the bar. But the one after. They all got shifted over by tended to get shifted over by an eighth note because we were probably feeling triplet, 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 triplet. Where then the top of, or the middle of each of these, right? There we go. That becomes a point where there's a beat. That is really important that we understand that there's not a beat there. That is still between beats. And also ties us back into simple versus compound meter, right? If we were feeling a triplet eighth note, then yes, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But then we'd only be in 4/4, not 6/4. Okay, Alexis, making sense so far? Dith, I can't pronounce that word in the text, and I would have to look up a translation. Do you have a translation for us, Dith? Okay, Alexis, great. You say it's making sense. Awesome. So let's look a little bit more at this entire page and take your time. Notice how when we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, our intention through the eighth note passages is different because it's now 1, 2, 3. The intention, like I just pointed out, isn't on the top note. It's not up there. It's 1. Which leads us to play the passage very differently, and the subsequent bars too. Yeah? So I know the tempo says poco allegro, a little fast. Think about the speed of the quarter note as being a little fast. And not I wouldn't say the overall sense of this piece should in any way really be allegro. Especially not if we're focused on the melody. The melody is this beautiful singing, sustained line that it just goes and soars in the tenor range, but it just sings beautifully for us. So we shouldn't feel in a hurry or like the melody needs to happen quickly. But if I do count all of the quarter notes, for example, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 1. That does feel like allegro, doesn't it? If we just listen to the pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in that sense, if we're counting the quarters, it is. But if we listen just to the overall line, listen to how much space there is for you to explore the melody and make sure that it's voiced and phrased just the way you want it to be. Yeah? And even where it gets a little more intense, it still doesn't tumble away from us, and it never feels like it gets out of control. Yeah? This is a dream of love. It's a little dark, but here's some of the text. Oh love, as long as you can love, as long as you wish to love. That's the first line. Okay, here comes the sadness in the second line. The hour will come when you stand by graves and lament, and take care that your heart glows and harbors love and bears love, as long as another heart still beats in return with warm with love. Okay. I think, that, sink into those words. If you don't have a translation, Alexis, you can easily find one online. And think about that text. It's a combination of warmth of love and sorrow and grief. And it will build into something else as we get into the next part of the piece, right? But if we can stay tuned to that warmth and peacefulness even, affection, this isn't like the fiery fireworks thing. It's not yet. It might be later, but at the beginning, let's make sure that we're in this really calm place. Okay, so let's see, Alexis, we talked about meter, we talked about counting, we talked about making sure the eighth notes here, that you're not feeling those as triplets, but you're truly feeling them as eighths, with the high point of each group of this is not the top, but it's bum, 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 bum. And when we take that high note and we take it off a strong beat, it no longer gets accented. Yeah? And lastly, the other thing that we mentioned was just being sure that our rhythms are lining up with the right part of the bar. So don't shift your quarter notes over to being dividing our eighths into groups of three, but keep them truly where they're printed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3. Yeah? Okay. Yes, Dith. Let's see here. Oh, thanks for some of these translations. Dith and Webster. Hello, Webster. Seth, you said compound time signatures make judging speed really confusing. They do. Yeah. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything before we get into some of the more technical spots that we heard. Let's talk about one more thing, Alexis, before we go on. Back at the top, I think you should take some time and play just the bass and the melody. And pedal 2. And I'll show this again, because what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I play the melody with the finger and the hand that's intended because of the rest of the musical movement. What we're working on is making sure we know and understand the shape of the melodic phrase and just how long it is. So starting from the beginning, the melody's in the left hand, right? And then to the right, left. But growing, I should play those with thumb. Hear the phrase, and then all with the left. and focus on how long that phrase really is and how we can make it sing. Where's the high point of that? And what emotion is it bringing? What emotion do we feel in measure 3 on that half step? That relaxes then in the next bar. And just so how intense, how quietly intense is this moment? So we get a nice resolution and then even more finality. Let's keep going into the next phrase because we get even more intensity. Still just playing melody and bass. So your challenge, Alexis, is how beautiful and vocal-like, or think about it, Bethany earlier said like a cello. It sounds like a cello line. How beautiful and soaring can you make this melody without all of the noise or the distraction of everything that's happening else, everything else that's happening in the right hand? Ricardo, hello, my friend. Oh, welcome, Ricardo. Okay, so Alexis, summing that up, experiment a little bit. Experiment with just the melody, with phrasing it, and feeling how the pulses all line up and carry us forward, and envision it as a singer or as a cellist, especially if you can watch some cellists play and think of the bow on the string and the intensity of sound as the bow moves and as the cellist plays. Watch some cellists play that. I usually think about vocalists because I have sung and I've taken voice lessons and I've taught voice lessons. And so I find it easier to feel that, especially because many of us pianists don't have experience playing the cello. We might have friends that do, or we can easily find stuff online. But we can all, without having another instrument, we can all sing, right? So feel what it's like to let your breath go and let a line soar that comes from here instead of just from here. Okay, let's talk about the next bit. And we're going to skip a little bit. A lot of what we just talked about applies. Why don't we skip to some practice techniques for this cadenza that we heard? All right. Alexis, this was pretty successful in your performance. The spots that are holding you up with getting this even better are, it looks like, the fact that if you have practiced this in groupings, it sounds like your groupings are by hand position only. So what I'm drawing in right now seemed to me, and it looked and sounded like we have practiced that. And we're feeling those pauses. Yeah? Especially on the way up. So, if you haven't done this, Alexis, shift that to the opposite grouping across the leap. So then we have okay, at least up until we get these figures that start to turn at the top, and then our groups that are longer than 2. Right? So we want to eliminate any feeling that we have da-da, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Because truly, if we allow the hand time to move from here to here, so up that small leap, a small leap turns into a very difficult leap at a high tempo, right? So we want to challenge in practice getting across that leap much more quickly. Yeah? I'm just reading some of the comments from Ricardo and Webster. That's an interesting discussion, you two. Okay, Alexis, does this part make sense, how we're dividing the groupings up? We're creating, I like to call them a challenge grouping. So the easy one is giving us time where the hand needs to move. And that's great for our first learning of the notes. After they're a little bit more ingrained for us, really, as soon as you can do this with any level of confidence in your practice, change to the grouping that's much more difficult. Yeah? Okay. Okay, great. Yes, Alexis, wonderful. Then we can start to alter the groupings even more. How about we take... truly, I feel like the first eighths here that are in the left hand are a part of this. I'm looking at the right hand in groupings because the right hand is much more difficult than the left. So really, we have a group of 6, and we have many groups of 6. I'll draw each subsequent group with different brackets on each side. So there's 6. Here's our next group of 6. And then we have slurs that show the next group of 6 and 6, and continuing on from there all the way down to the bottom. So if you did feel the opening notes of 25 as your initial notes that lead into the cadenza, then we can feel everything throughout the rest of the cadenza as in 6, instead of having the first part of the cadenza only be 4. You're seeing how I'm getting these numbers, yeah? Being 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah? So we can create more symmetry in that if instead we take those first 2 notes of the left hand as a grouping. So now, instead of practicing only in groups of 2, we're practicing in groups of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that really leads you nicely into the second half of the cadenza. Yes? I think that's pretty good to get you started, Alexis. It seemed like your playing of the cadenza was nice and light. So that's good. Yeah. To bring back in something that we talked about earlier, I wouldn't be in a rush to get through it. Try to, when you're working on increasing your speed, try to only let yourself increase to the point where it's still really articulate and clear. So if that is... That was too fast for me because I missed a note. Okay, so as I am choosing that tempo and I'm trying to be aware of every pitch I'm playing, sometimes I allow myself to speed up and show a shape if I'm ultra confident that I know where the line is going. And if I don't, right there at the beginning, I practiced this a little bit yesterday, just a tiny bit yesterday in preparation for this. So I'm not reading it, but I know, I can feel where I need a hesitation in order to make sure I'm not going to play anything wrong and it's not going to be sloppy. because we don't want to do any repetition anytime where we splat a note if possible, right? That's always the goal, is that every repetition we do is as accurate as we could possibly make it. So if it needs to go, I missed the top note. If it needs to be that slow, take a tempo that slow. And it doesn't have to be boring, because you can still show a beautiful shape, right? Yes? One more technique tip, and something that yesterday as I was working through this I found I really enjoyed. It let the cadenza feel really, really confident quickly, was playing detached and with a little bit of wrist articulation. So... it makes me feel like my fingers they really know where they're going, and they're really going to land in the right place. And I'm not trying to push the tempo while I do that. I'm just enjoying the feeling of stability through the passage. And then when we do want to work on speed, again, don't ever take it faster than you can play the right notes. But then lighten everything up and try and let it be as free as possible. Alexis, do you have any other questions for me about the piece? I think that covered everything that I wanted to talk through. Yeah. Let me know. Does anybody have any questions about anything I just mentioned? We'll give Alexis some time to ponder and type something in. Dith, I'm reading your comment right now, yeah. Anything from anybody about the piece, about technique? Oh, here we go. Newt Boy. Newt Boy, you say, is there a course where I tackle a cadenza? There isn't. And actually, as I was practicing this yesterday, I thought I should do a video on this one in particular, because if you can play this cadenza, you can play most Lisztian cadenzas. It uses a pretty similar technique. And the way Liszt writes cadenzas, there are a lot of times he uses a diminished fifth, or there's some kind of diminished chord or tritone that's used in his cadenza figures, and there's a very particular pattern that gets repeated, and there's always a small leap. He could probably play them extremely easily himself, and he wrote a lot of stuff like that. Webster, I like your comment there. You say it's important for students to remember that passages like this shouldn't be played like an exercise at breakneck speed. It's just an effect, but it also has a structure. It has a structure. It has a meaning. Yeah. Alexis, Long's recording, since you brought that one up, and if anybody else is familiar, the one that has a million or 2 million views on YouTube, he plays actually kind of a massive number of wrong notes in his desire to achieve an effect and to achieve a flourish. I wouldn't try to emulate that. He starts to take off very, very quickly on the ascent of this cadenza, and on the way down, like half of the notes he they don't sound. I think he tried to make them sound. And did he achieve that effect? He achieved something. I don't think it needs to be that. I don't think Liszt would have wanted it to be something so flighty and crazy. And that's not anything that this piece is even about. And so there's nothing wrong with the tempi of the cadenza that you'll hear from Katya Bunyatishvili. I think her cadenza here is really, really nice. Tiffany Poon I listened to yesterday. She does... It's nice. It's a little faster. I don't feel like she has as much to say with it. But to go back to that, I think... Alexis. Okay, the Spotify recording. I don't know that one. I'll have to take a listen to that. Yeah, Webster, yeah. I think it's much more important to have, Alexis, to have an idea that you're trying to convey through the cadenza. A cadenza isn't just a showy line. It's not that. And, you know, one thing that one of my teachers told me, he needed to tell me a couple times for it to stick. But that a lot of times things that we think need to be incredibly fast have much more meaning for our audience if we take a few notches off the tempo that we might desire or that we think we desire, and we let things bloom and we explore the ideas musically more. And he probably told me that 6 or 7 times over the course of 6 years. And it didn't really stick with me until after I was finished studying with him. But there's finding meaning and playing with meaning is always going to be more enjoyable for us and more enjoyable for the audience than, and whoever that audience is, whether you're playing for a concert hall full of people or whether you're playing for friends and family, it's going to be much more meaningful, and they're going to get more out of it if the cadenza or any fast passage is a part of the story that you're telling with the rest of the piece. So make this measure 25 fit in with the rest of the story, with the rest of the poetry. That's your challenge, yeah? And Jess, you say, mourning at the graveside doesn't seem like it should be fast. You're right. The challenge with a piece like this is coming up with what line of poetry or what word of the poetry is Liszt describing with that cadenza. I don't think that cadenza, first of all, it's truly in a major key. Let's see. Everything is resolving minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor, major. He doesn't use his typical diminished progression. So what is this? Is it the glowing of the heart? Is it a heart beating? Is it a fluttering? Is it like that feeling of butterflies? In which case, sure, there can be a little bit of that sense of flightiness. But there's a whole lot more to say. Noteworthy says maybe there was a thunderstorm. Jess, warmth of memories of love shared. Those are all great. Yeah. Yes. Oh, Alexis. Okay, I like where you're going. I just saw your comment. that you wanted to give a sparkly impression like teardrops. I think that is still a good visual to have. And if you can like do that in conjunction with what Webster just wrote, who said the point isn't a movement to show off, it's very sensual and visual in nature. You say it's almost like leaves falling from a tree. It could be leaves blowing in the tree, even not even falling, just the wind, not even wind, just a gentle breeze. It's not, I would say, and sorry to be disagreeable, noteworthy, but it's probably not a thunderstorm. It is nowhere near violent enough to be a thunderstorm, and I don't think we should attempt to make it that. And the wind isn't howling. It's just it's a rustling. Yeah. So Alexis, I like your idea of like teardrops. That's great. So think about that as teardrops fall. How fast is that really happening? And maybe combine that with how you see the light refract off tears. Yeah. And then we get that combination of both the slowness and the calmness that truly most tears are about. They're us trying to find calm, right? But combined with how light works and just creates all these intricate and really visually stunning things, yeah? And that juxtaposition of those two ideas could lead you to a really beautiful interpretation of that cadenza. Ricardo, you're saying waterfalls. If that works for you, Ricardo, I won't argue with it. I tend to think of, for me, and this is why interpretation is so personal, because what works for one person and the visual that works for one person, and I'm not disagreeing with Ricardo because I know he's a phenomenal pianist, but what works for one person may not work for another, because when I think about waterfalls, I think about this like explosion of water just falling off a cliffside, and it's a huge moment. And that image doesn't fit how I see that measure at all. And maybe Ricardo's waterfall is very different from what I just described. And that's great. Yeah. And if you say it's reminiscent of autumn taking the leaves from the trees. Yeah, Dith. Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So I think, Alexis, I think you didn't have any more questions. Let's see. Let me reflect one more time on one of your comments. I didn't see this earlier. So you said, some might find your pianistic choice sacrilegious. Well, I think the only time any teacher or well-trained musician would have a right to argue about an artistic choice is if it doesn't come across in your playing. I think there are so many ways, that's a bit of a generalization, but there are so many different ways of interpreting things, and there are so many images we can paint. The most important thing is that we feel it and we truly do everything we can to represent that in our playing. When it's not represented or something isn't represented and it turns into just notes that we're playing in the right order, then that's not good, right? And for those like Ricardo and Webster that are here that I know you have much more experience, yeah, sure, there are traditions we need to follow from certain composers, and there are other places we can look to get a better clue, a better understanding of what exactly it is that they're trying to say and what we should be trying to replicate, at least somewhat, with our interpretation. Our interpretation can't just be whatever we come up with. That's not quite okay either. But if we don't have all that background yet, and we're working on building it, and we're learning and learning and learning, then it's still most important to be authentic to you, the piece, and the scene you create, and making sure that it never turns into an exercise, to quote Webster from earlier today. Great. Yeah, I think someone said this is ABRSM level 9. ABRSM I think goes up to level 8, and then there's a diploma level after that. It's a high level. It's Henley level 7 out of 9. 7 is considered advanced music in the Henley catalog. I would guess it's RCM level 10. Not 10, maybe probably a diploma level, so above that. It's a difficult piece. And even where there's less movement in the notes, it is very difficult to express the melody and show that expression between the hands, most of the time between thumbs. That's very hard. So even the spots in the piece that are easy are very difficult to play really well musically, artistically. And then we have this cadenza and the other one that we didn't get to today, which I I think is easier than this first one. So Webster, you say diploma 1. I'm thinking that you're saying that about RCM has 2 diploma levels. I don't know about ABRSM. So I'm assuming that's about the RCM leveling system. And diploma 1 it's all quite challenging to play well. All right, before we move on, let's give one more round of applause to Alexis. Thank you for sending this in, Alexis. I hope you found this very helpful. I know it takes a lot of guts to show us where you are, but this place is always a place where we can work on wherever we are in our journey and whatever state our piece is in. So thank you for sending it in, and we'd love to hear from you again. Okay. Next up, and I see Lauri, you're still here. Wonderful. We are going to hear Lauri play a little bit of, actually the entire piece, a piece by Heather Hammond, contemporary composition for something entirely different. You say you're still here at Scared now. Oh, gosh. There's nothing to be scared about. We're just having a good time. I guess it's easier for me to say that. I'm not the one on the receiving end. But no, we're just here to explore music and learn together. So no, Lauri, don't apologize. Don't apologize. Never. We are everybody that's here is we're all in very different places. So, and we're just all in different parts of our journey. And that's great. It makes life exciting. Okay, let me cue that up. And so this is a piece called Song for Lance. And see, Alexis says it's not bad. So let me get that queued up, and we're going to take a listen to Lauri playing this. Oh, and thanks, Webster. Hit that thumbs up button if you could, please. That didn't work at all, so give me 1 second. Fingers crossed. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. Let's give Lauri a nice round of applause. Let's see. Bedlington Groomer said the piece is beautiful. Just the kind of music you love to play. Yes. Yeah. Very nice, Lauri. Lauri, let us know, because I always ask this question at the beginning of working. How long have you been working on this piece? Yeah. And I will also start with some of the really nice stuff that I heard and saw from your playing. So yeah, let us know what you said, a month, maybe a little bit more. Wonderful. Great. Yeah. Okay. So, Lauri, your sense of pulse and rhythm and direction, really, really good. Every bar fits together really nicely. You followed all of the dynamics on the page. All of the articulations were nicely followed. So you're very perceptive and looking at everything and truly seeing everything that's marked. That's great. I'll have a question. I didn't catch it on your playthrough, but here in measure 13, is that the fingering that you're using? I was watching the score and I missed your playing of it, but that seems... It's okay. Is that the fingering you're using? And if it feels okay to you, we won't change anything. I didn't notice a problem. It didn't sound like there was a problem. It just seems awkward. Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad that you said that. Okay. Great. So we will not address that then. Great. I know some people that are published by EVC, and they always require composers to send in fingerings with the pieces. And some composers really don't like doing that because there are a lot of ways of getting from point A to point B. You say you're making it 2 1 2 3, 2 1 2 3, if that's right. And then maybe ending with... That works. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Good. Lauri, let's talk about gesture as you play. You, at the beginning here, first of all, you do a great job of showing a preparation for every note. So you're always playing something already in motion, which is wonderful. We want to do that. Sometimes the preparation gesture seems really out of character for everything else. Like it could be a really big, and then a big drop of the wrist and the arm together. And that leads to two potential issues, one of which we heard a couple times in the piece. For example, here, I won't show the music because I want you to see what I'm doing here, but we have a marking and it's marked forte. And if we do a really big wrist movement to play the uppermost part of the phrase, we get a really big accent. You're putting the high point in the right place, but it's out of the phrase. It's too much. Yeah, and I think a lot of that is coming from just the fact that there's too big of a gesture here. And some other times, if we don't want to, I would have to go back and watch the recording to pinpoint exactly where this happens. So I'm going to take a few guesses. I know I saw it happen, but for example, in a measure like this, if we're doing another big wrist lift and drop on the thumb, when the thumb begins a phrase, it's highly likely we're going to have that big accent because we're just letting too much weight fall on a finger that's already difficult to control. So let's see if we can round some of our gestures a little bit. We don't want to get rid of them at all. We just want to maybe modify them if we can. If I go back to the beginning. Oops. Let's talk about this one first. This isn't about a preparation, but every time you played through this, you did a nice rotation from 2 to 5 and then came back. But the wrist was really still. What about feeling more movement in a circular fashion that carries us through the phrase? Like the wrist is singing the phrase just as much as the fingers are. Yeah, so we're still doing this rotation, but more circular movement in the wrist. Now let's get into a spot that we just mentioned. So that one repeats a lot, so we can work on more of that circular shape across that phrase. But in measure 5, just to show everybody what we're looking at for a second before we go back, measure 5 is the second system. This was a spot that we just talked about where the preparation to lead to the second phrase, the phrase that begins with the thumb. Lauri, I'm going to come back to that, your question in just a second. So in 5 here, this is that spot I was showing where we might have too big of an accent. Yeah? So instead of getting rid of it, we don't want to do that. We're still going to prepare. We're still going to drop. It's just one, we're going to modify the preparation so it's a bit smaller. So it might not be up as high. Whether that's happening in 5 or elsewhere, that'll be up to you to check on, that we're not dropping from way up here. And secondly, instead of falling straight down into the note, make a gesture that moves us laterally. So as we play that thumb, it's carrying the hand into 3. Yeah? So now we don't have a vertical drop that's followed by a lift or something like that, where it's just in one plane, up and down like that. But instead, we're incorporating a whole circle, which you can kind of see there, and you can see here, right? So the drop incorporates movement through to where the hand needs to go, right? Same thing here. So here, we're showing a dropping at the beginning of the phrase, and then you're doing the right thing by playing with a little more weight on the high point of the phrase, but we want to cushion it and round it more so that we don't get that big and kind of harsh accent. But we can still sing to the top of the phrase, which you're doing a good job of, but we're singing through a drop and sideways motion as well that turns us around. Yes. Now let me go back to your question. And hello, Nico. So you said gestures such as in bar 2. Yeah. I think we're on the same page. I'm using the word gesture right now to mean truly physically what we're showing with the hand. It's a great idea for everybody if think about your hand and your wrist and your arm, the whole playing mechanism is involved in singing the phrase and singing the line that you want to, that we're playing, that we're in the middle of. The whole body is involved in that. So if let's juxtapose that first against the opposite. If we're only thinking, okay, I need to connect and I need to know, okay, I know this is legato from one note to the next note to the next note, and we think, well, I'm playing with my fingers. Then we'd get something much even less expressive than what you played, Lauri, but For example, this line. Sure, that's played with legato and it's played smoothly. But it's kind of meaningless. It's just the right notes at the right time, played with the right articulation. And that's not making music. Right? But if we feel like our entire body, and we're starting with fingers, wrist, arm first, but if our entire body is connected to the feeling of the phrase and showing it, it doesn't have to be, I don't mean be long and play like that. That's excessive. And arguably not showing anything special either, because there's so much. What do we pay attention to? Okay? But how can we let the body in general be even more free? That's a really nice piece to play. It's fun. Nico, this is called Song for Lance by Heather Hammond. Seth, you say, is it reasonable to replace wrist with forearm in this description? Oh, thanks for being here, Becky. So Seth, I'm not sure exactly what part of the description you were referring to. If we're talking about gestures made with the wrist, okay, truly they are made with the whole arm. The whole arm is involved in the process. We see the most evidence of the movement at the wrist. So when we say making circles or gestures with the wrist, we're not doing those holding the rest of the mechanism tightly or binding it, right? We're not holding it and then saying, telling the wrist to do something. That's not going to work either. So sometimes it goes back to the reason even why we call things wrist rotation instead of forearm rotation. Truly, they mean the same thing. One of them is anatomically correct, forearm rotation. But for most people, we see and understand because we don't feel or think about necessarily the part of the body that's causing the action that we see. That makes sense. So when we say rotation, well, if you tell anybody, what are you doing when you do this? They will probably say twisting your wrist. That's not anatomically what's happening. We're twisting from the forearm and all the way back up at the elbow. That's what's happening. But the most movement happens here. And that's what we start to pay attention to because that's what we see. And when we tell the wrist to move, when our conscious brain tells the wrist to move, the body, so smartly built that it does everything that we need to do further away in order to make it happen. So sometimes when we say wrist circles, okay, that's because we're thinking about the shape, the end result that the wrist is making. Thanks for being here, Bethany. But truly, everything in the playing mechanism, and I have limited that right now to talking about fingers, bridge, wrist, forearm, but it's everything above the forearm, the upper arm, the shoulder, the neck, the back, the hips. They're all involved in the playing process, and they should all be free to move and help the expression that we're looking to generate. So, Seth, I hope that answered your question. So going back to this, Lauri, is that making sense that we want to let things be a little more free and round the shapes that you're currently making with the wrist? Because you're doing really, really good things. The preparation is great and the dropping is great. But now instead of being, we'll call it jagged motions for now, instead of just being in one plane, yeah, we want it to be in a 360-degree plane. Sphere, yeah? We work at the keyboard up, down, left, right, and in and out of the keyboard. And so all of that we have at our disposal, and the more we use, the more expressive we can be, and the easier it is actually to play everything too. Lauri, this is, wonderful job for the first time. It does make sense to record. Yeah. That sums up the technical things. That sums up the technical things. Let's talk about some of the musical shapes that we're making here. Okay. Right at the beginning, we have two almost exact repetitions, right? So we have this line that is G sharp, fully diminished, back to C. And then G sharp fully diminished is a part of the E7 chord. And our melody is almost exactly the same. How can we differentiate the beginning of both measure 2 and measure 4 from one another? So, a couple suggestions. One is, what in measure 2 and in measure 4, what is the most interesting note that we have in the melody? Anybody can answer this. What is the most interesting note? Rhodesy, this is called Song for Lance by Heather Hammond. Alexis says, which measure? Measure 2, but also measure 4. June, you say G sharp. Lauri says the high F. We'll go with that. Okay? The two most important notes are the G sharp and the high F. And you could say the most important melodic movement is between those two. That leap. That's the most important leap. My ear is most drawn to not the G sharp, but the F. Because the composer could have written the line to go not A sharp, not A. Let's see. It could have been that, or it could have been. There are many different ways the line could have been written, but she chose to leap from G sharp a significant distance. And up to the 7th of our G sharp diminished chord, or the 9 of our E dominant 7. So those are both far from root, right? So that note, I would say the high F especially, we want to give a particular inflection to that. We want to have, I'd argue, the first statement in measure 2 go to the F sharp. So crescendoing. And then backing away. And then, if we make that shape, that allows measure 4 to be different purely because of the marking given by the composer, that we're not going to F natural, but we're actually going to the harmony change because of the crescendo marked. So now, as a listener, when somebody is listening back, we have two measures back to back, and they hear one, and then they hear the next one, and they say, well, the harmony changed, but this melody is the same as what I just heard. We've given them something else to tune into. Right? We always want to keep the ear interested. So then the high point of measure, actually the phrase that is in measure 4 becomes the downbeat of measure 5. Yes? Okay, so Lauri, we're just talking about the first 2 measures right now, but where there are these similar passages, continue to look for ways to differentiate them. And how big is that movement dynamically up to F? And then how big is our crescendo in 4 going to be? And let's see. I'm not going to say anything else about that bar. But how far do we go across the leap, and how far do we take the crescendo? I would exaggerate to a point. We don't want to take it out of the feeling of the piece, but do feel free to be expressive. And let 5 be an arrival. And when we get the new dynamic marking in 6, you did a nice job at the beginning here of not letting it be overly forte and overly strong. It was the downbeat that became too strong, right? That dynamic it's in an interesting place compositionally because 5 is an arrival, 6 is nice and different and interesting harmonically, but to say middle of 6, we have a new dynamic. I don't think we should exactly follow that. I think we need to lead into forte, or that we feel forte happen here instead, but it's without an accent. And gosh, truly, I would even go so far, if you need some help stepping the dynamics up to find where that forte is so it's not surprising, mark how big is the downbeat of 5, how big is the downbeat of 6, and then when we arrive to forte, then we have a more graduated scale of dynamic that we've followed, so that we don't run into the temptation of playing beautiful line followed by, which is technically what's marked. Lauri, you didn't do that. But I'm just pointing out for everybody here, right? Continue to look at the phrase and look at where it's leading. And don't let yourself be limited only by, if we take everything else off here, we only have 3 dynamic markings. We have mezzo piano, a crescendo there over just a bar, and then forte. That's very little, right? But we've discovered there is something to do in measure 2, there's something to do in measure 3, there's a different thing to do in measure 4. Measure 5 is an arrival, which is also different. Measure 6 is broadening the harmonic language into the 2 chord, which all of those things lead us to the forte that's marked in measure 6. Truly the arrival in measure 7. Yeah? Okay. Then we have a repeat here. So, this is a really wonderful opportunity to be just a little indulgent. And I think the piece, you can do that in a piece like this. So leading into measure 14, we have a lot of the same movement. But don't just blaze through. I didn't even have to erase it, but don't just blaze through that leap in time. Make that a really special moment. So once again, we're going to the 9th of the chord. That doesn't happen all that often in this piece, and it's our first time doing it in this harmony. So make that leap a really, really special moment. Yeah? Now, depending on how special you make that is going to dictate what you have to do with the rest of the line. So I guess I'll give you two options. My tendency personally would be to play making that G, the high point of the phrase, and the thing that we really tune into and lock in on artistically. But there, you could argue that we're going to go through the movement up to the top because we really want to show the descending line that's tumbling down. So. Then we'd play it differently. But be really clear, Lauri, with your choice. Or if you have 2 times to do this, which I believe we have something very similar in 30 later in the piece. So yeah, we kind of have 2 times to do it. Do one of the times and do the other time. So choose. Do you want to really highlight the leap? That's more with rubato and less with a big crescendo up, right? Or do we want to move through? Because then we feel the phrase more quickly move to its deceptive resolution. Yeah? So just, Lauri, keep those things in mind. When we get to 17 and beyond, where we have all these tenutos marked, the tenuto, I think you had a good interpretation. The tenuto shouldn't mean, in this case, hold longer and take a lot of rubato on every single one of these notes. So you did a good job not letting that happen. I think the tenuto purely means this is what you should bring out. Here's the melody, but don't take extra time doing it. Lauri, I'll come back to that pedaling question in a second. As you're playing these bars, 17 through the end of the page, and then the top of the next page, you had a tendency in your performance to accent the thumb or bring the thumb out too much as well. So be sure that it's really the top line that we're hearing. And all of your thumbs, truly, you could play them all pianissimo. Same thing on the next page. Okay? But don't let the thumb distract us from truly what the line is and the melody is on those bars. Back to your question. You said about measures 14 and 15. Should you follow a fingering to play the melody completely legato? You say you cheat with the pedal and detach once or twice. Lauri, I feel that if we are really listening, and there are teachers that would disagree with this, but I have very strong opinions about it. If we're truly listening and we understand how to make a good phrase, you can make a beautiful phrase with the same finger, and you can make a legato phrase with the same finger played over and over and over again. In fact, in the first piece we listened to today, you have to do that with the thumb in both hands, and there is no way to play with finger legato in the Liszt that we heard earlier. So there's my justification behind this answer. There are so many times in the repertoire that we have to play legato. We have to show legato. But we can't always physically execute it that way. I would argue that using the pedal well, you can absolutely play a legato line, lifting the hand completely. And is that going to sound any different than finger substitution on that C to actually finger legato it? And I would say no. There are times I do think that finger legato is important and necessary, but I don't think it's... Let me say this. Finger legato does not guarantee a legato line. Because it's much more than that. And if we're tuned into that, then yes, you can, Lauri, back to your question, you can detach with the fingers and use the pedal to create connection, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So, the fingers that I might use in 14, I would probably jump, yeah. No, I wouldn't. Here's exactly what I would do. But don't feel like you have to change this. We can just use this as an opportunity to learn. But you don't need to change what you've practiced. I would play 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, but I would substitute thumb on the bottom note to hold the whole note. It's marked, gosh. I think I would do that because it would help me connect to the phrase, not because we're ever going to lift the pedal. The pedal's still going to be down. But I would do this fingering because I think it would help me play more expressively. Not because the thumb needs to hold this pitch the whole time. The pedal's going to do it. So, and then I would detach from 4 and play 5. So we'll make that a letter D for detach instead of a, don't get confused with the number 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, substitute 1. And I'll show you this with my other camera as well. So, like that. Substitute. But notice how 4 and 5, I'm not stretching to try and play that with finger legato. The pedal is purely... You know what? We could go even further. Looking at this a little more, you don't even need to play with the finger substitution. That's the fingering I'd use. Going into the next bar. Five, 4, 3, and then we would have to leap. I'll draw a D again for detached. To 5, 4, 3 probably. And let's see. Yep. 2, detach, and play 3 and 1 at the end. I think all of those are... I don't think any of that is cheating. Not at all. We can still play legato, even though we're not playing with finger legato and we're lifting the hand away. Yeah? Yeah, so going back, you said your teacher gave you fingers with some finger substitutions. I mean, it's not Bach. So, because we have the pedal, if you had to play this whole line... and we had to sustain those whole notes the whole time, then sure. And we couldn't use the pedal, then we'd have to use finger substitution. There would be plenty of it. But doing all of that in this case, makes it a lot harder to play the line, to truly play the line. And we get the opportunity, luxury of playing with the pedal. Yeah. And I think you have to hold the pedal down the whole bar. We're not pedaling to go back here. And Lauri, you're not doing this. But with this type of accompaniment, you would never pedal twice in the bar. We wouldn't do that because then we're losing the root, the fundamental bass that we need to sustain for the duration, even though it's not printed as a whole note. Is that too much blur for most classical music? Yes. But this isn't that. It's contemporary piano. So, Lauri, that was officially everything that I wanted to talk about. We covered some technique, gesture. We talked about shape and phrase and high points. And we talked about making sure our thumb on those repeated notes isn't getting in the way of shape. And now this, a little bit about here, pedaling, finger, legato, etc. And anytime you've got two of the same phrase, do something different. And even if they're not back to back right in a row, you know, when this movement comes back, how can you play it differently on the second page? And how has the journey that we've taken to get to that repeat, how is that changing the interpretation of those bars when we hear them again? So keep that in mind. Do you have any other questions, Lauri? Does anybody have any questions about anything that we talked about? Happy to clarify or go down a rabbit hole. One very small one, Lauri, you say, okay. While Lauri types that, if we want to give him a round of applause, that would be great. Really, really nice work, Lauri. So you say you're playing just the bottom note. Yeah. Oh, welcome, OCD King. Lauri, you say you're playing just the bottom note in the left hand in bar 23. You don't really know how to do what Heather wrote. 20. Okay. Great. So let's take a look at that, and then we will have a couple minutes for a couple other questions. So you said 23? Lauri, what's your maximum hand span? What are we looking at? Is it more than an octave? So those are the notes we're talking about. The way it's written to be played would be holding that 10th. Guarantee you, there's probably an easy answer here, Lauri. Guarantee you that the composer doesn't have that reach. Oh, thanks, Newt Boy. Good to see you. And Melody, hello, welcome. I don't think I got to say hi earlier. Welcome. So you say you've got about an octave or a semitone, maybe a ninth. Okay. Not to worry. In a piece like this, especially, just let go. Because we're pedaling everything for the entire bar. So going back to 21. You can even see my left hand is singing the line with the right hand. And because it's doing that, it's lifting away from the keys. And the two previous bars, we have completely pedaled through all of that. In fact, I actually, because of the texture of the rest of the piece, even if you could reach all of this and hold it down. And we'd pedal to keep the melody clear every time. That doesn't sound like everything else that we've played. It doesn't sound like the texture that's built in the left hand through that bar and this bar. So for the sake of consistency there, we're just going to pedal from 21. One pedal per bar. Which means, like you can see, my left hand just moving from one to the next. As if it's an arpeggio. So that'll make that bar much easier to play than as it's marked. Okay. There was one other measure, 38, that on the recording you didn't play the left hand. But I think that was just a recording fluke. I didn't get the sense that that was a purposeful omission. So. Great stuff, Lauri. Thanks so much for sending in. We will hope to hear from you again. But yeah, wonderful work. And I personally love working on contemporary piano just as much as I love the rest of the classical repertoire and the list that we worked on earlier today and whatnot. So great job. Okay. We've got about 10 minutes. Are there any questions from anybody? Either about something we covered today or something completely unrelated, something you've been holding on to for almost 2 hours that you've wanted to ask. Nico, I'm going to cover your question because you're just right on the ball. Yeah. And Nancy, this will be perfect. I'll answer both of those questions, and that might be our 10 minutes. Yes. Great, Rhodesy. Record it with you playing. And send it in, Rhodesy. We want to hear you playing your music. Especially if it's not that hard of a piece. Okay. Nico, your question is about Summer Storm in Gillick. The lyric preludes. So, let's see here. There we go. Those measures. We're talking about the measures in this piece that have grace notes. So, here's this piece. This is a piece by William Gillick, and it's a part of his set, lyric pieces, I think, in the Romantic style. Yes, lyric preludes in the Romantic style. And we're going to be talking about the grace notes that happen here and there. Because when Nico and I were talking before, they're written as acciacculaturas because of the slash through them, not as appoggiaturas. And so what does that mean for our execution of these spots? So if we get into this a little bit. For this first one, Nico, we want to be sure that the staccato does not get caught in the pedal. The pedal truly captures the grace note. And for drama's sake, notice the grace note is significantly before the primary pitch up there. And the primary note is the one that we're lining up with the right hand. And I don't think that is too long at all. Especially because we have to let go of that staccato. We need time for that to happen, for the pedal to come down, to capture the grace note, and leap. So plus the marking sforzando, I think, also indicates that we can take a little bit of time on that accent, right on that downbeat. So, whoops. Yep, making sense, Nico. The next one is going to be similar as well. Let's see. Wrong notes. So the fermata is over the bar line and it's after the pedals, or is in between the pedals. So that is quasi fermata over a rest. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to get there. I don't think it needs to be that sort of movement. Yeah. I think it takes away from the drama if we try to make the grace note too attached to the beat. So. Etc. Yes. So Nico, yeah, hopefully hearing the intention that's between the notes there in these couple spots, that helps to unlock what's really going on here. Yeah? Cool. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a big, grand moment. So take the time you need to make it bold. If we hurry through, kind of like a theme we talked about earlier, if we hurry through, we're going to lose the intention that's underneath, even though it's marked as a grace note. Let's see. Nancy, your question was, can you elaborate when you said it's not Bach about pedaling? So typically, Nancy, and for everybody, when we play Bach, it's most common to use no pedal. Pedaling in Bach is it's a real there's a lot of controversy around pedaling in Bach, right? So most people fall very squarely into two camps. You either never pedal when you play Bach, or you can pedal when you play Bach because we're not playing on an instrument that Bach wrote for. So why wouldn't we take advantage of what this instrument has to offer that Bach couldn't take advantage of? And that argument will probably never cease. My personal inclination with Bach is that tiny touches of pedal are okay as long as they don't blur anything. So if I want to use a tiny bit of pedal to connect something that I otherwise maybe it's extremely uncomfortable to connect, I'm going to take that tiny touch of pedal as long as it does not blur the counterpoint and the voice leading of any lines. I personally, that's the line that I draw. I'm not going to use any pedal so much that any voice gets blurred. Most of the time, that still means that there's next to no pedal because there's so much movement and there's so much counterpoint that, every eighth note or every quarter note, there's an opportunity for that bad blur to happen. So even in my own playing, if I play Bach, you'll hear it 99% unpedaled. But I don't feel that the rule it's not black and white to me, that you just can't ever. I don't see Bach's music that way. Even the keyboard music, I tend to hear and want to replicate more like a string quartet playing, and the type of connection they might make in playing a piece of music and disconnection too. All of the articulations that each part would intend, that each player would intend. That's the way I think about a multi-voice work of Bach. And if a touch of pedal can help me articulate and connect a leap in the cello line, for example, that a cellist may have wanted to connect, I'm going to use it. But if that pedal then causes two notes to blur together for the violin line, I have to come up with a different solution. So I hope that somewhat clarifies. When we were talking about contemporary piano, you know, an arpeggiation like this, that isn't really a voice in and of itself. There is no counterpoint there. So we have, and even the melody itself gets blurred in contemporary piano, right? If this were a piece written by Bach, he wouldn't have written triads like that anyway. But let's just, for argument's sake, say it is. We would not blur because it's one instrument or one voice. So this would have to be completely its own line and all separate. Likewise, if the bottom was truly written for a cello or that sort of instrument, we wouldn't show anything sustaining like it does with the pedal. You would hear dum bum 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 bum. So it's about the right notes. And notice how clear then this voice leading is. Right? You could hear or even imagine a cellist playing bum 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 bum. But obviously when we put that all together, it doesn't sound at all like a contemporary piano piece, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the writing itself isn't melodic in nature. So we're going to pedal it. Nancy, does that answer a bit of that question? Yeah, Kale, you said when you played probably the minuet in G, you did not use the pedal. That's a good practice. I think for a lot of students, it's a good practice to not use pedal in Bach until you have such control over your pedaling that you can pedal for, you know, a 16th note. And you can take advantage of that. And if you're sure that you could take advantage of it and make it really clean, then we can start to approach Bach that way. But that usually takes quite a lot of practice and experience pedaling, intricate pedaling in a lot of other music first. So general rule, especially for students, don't pedal Bach. It's probably just going to cause problems. And if you're preparing for an exam, you're far more likely to get marked down if you pedal in Bach than if you just learn how to play it really well and articulately with the fingers. Let's see, we have a couple more questions come in. I'll see if I can answer them quickly. Oh, here we go. Okay. Alexis, you said earlier you're thinking of auditioning for a conservatory in 2 years. Very cool. You wanted to start learning audition pieces, but you're struggling to figure out what you should pick or criteria. So, Alexis, have you looked up conservatory audition requirements of schools in particular that you're interested in, or schools around the world? I am most familiar with the high-level conservatories in the U.S., and so audition requirements are a little different depending on the school, but the ones, for example, all of the schools that I auditioned for required a Bach Prelude and Fugue, a full classical sonata, large classical sonata, a large romantic work, an etude, a virtuosic etude of either Chopin or Liszt, and a contemporary piece. Contemporary meaning probably written between 1900 and 1940 from a composer like Schoenberg, etc. I played the Heather Sonata for my contemporary piece. So that's a very contemporary means something very different in academia than a contemporary piano that we were just talking about. Okay, so Alexis, then choose your pieces off those requirements. So that's the starting point and guideline to help us get started. And 2 years, you could start learning all of that stuff right now. That's 2 years is not too, it's not too far out in the future for you to just start to get that music in your fingers and work on it and just be able to own it. Have it be very personal to you. So be sure and pick things that you don't mind working on for that period of time. Some of the pieces, I've mentioned this before on streams, my classical sonata that I auditioned with was Beethoven's Appassionata, and I had lessons on it, not weekly, but at least one lesson a month on it over about 3 years in preparation for the audition. And, I posted the video about how long it should take to learn repertoire at different levels for intermediate pianists on the channel last week or the week before. And there were a couple people that, chimed in and said some people really agreed, and some people said, well, that's like such a long amount of time. 6 months, 8 months, that's a really long amount of time. And it really depends on what you want to do with your music. And so when I was auditioning for conservatory programs, auditions were kind of like a competition, and I wanted to get scholarships, etc. And so you have to be at the top of your class, if you will, right, in order to get those sorts of opportunities. And everybody that was a peer of mine at the time, let's say between 15 and 17 years old, all played and competed with repertoire that they had played for multiple years. Not that it took multiple years to learn it, but, and this is also true since we just had the Clyburn competition. Nobody in the Clyburn, very few people, probably almost nobody in the Clyburn competition, that would have been their first performance of a piece of music that they offered. So the similar things in that realm. So there are other people that are going to be auditioning that will have been playing their repertoire for 1, 2, 3, 5 years that they audition with. All that to say, choose something that you know you will enjoy playing for a lengthy amount of time. And secondly, that means you also have to be able to choose something from every period of music that you're going to enjoy for that length of time. So your Bach Prelude and Fugue needs to be something that you're going to enjoy practicing a year or two. Lauri, sounds good, Lauri. Thanks for being here and sending in your music to share. So Alexis, that's, you said that they want more obscure pieces. Maybe. That depends on the school. Really depends on the school. Let's see, what was my entire audition repertoire? I played Bach's C sharp major. I can't remember it anymore. I played that Prelude and Fugue, and I played the Beethoven Appassionata, and I played the Liszt Paganini Etude, which I haven't played in almost 20 years. That one. And I played Chopin's F sharp minor Polonaise. And the Heather Sonata. That was my audition rep. That was a long time ago. I think that covered everything. You said if your technique isn't that good yet, if you have to offer an etude, start on it like pronto, right away. And there are options in the etudes that they're all challenging, but there are some options that are going to be a little bit more accessible. We can talk more about this, Alexis, if you want to. But I would become familiar with the repertoire. You have a teacher to help you choose that stuff based on, they're going to know your technique much better than I do after just seeing you today. So talk with them about that and they'll be able to, but my biggest piece of advice is start working on that repertoire now. A large scale romantic piece, you could probably offer the Liszt Liebestraum as that piece. And that would fit. Hyper Joe. Hello, Hyper Joe. I'm going to try to answer your question and Miguel's, and we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon. Hyper Joe, you say, what fingering would you use for D, B, A, F sharp, going up or down? C sharp A? Or is it like this? Or D, B, A, F sharp? Hyper Joe, there are a lot of different ways to combine those two. Let's see. D and B, if we go from bottom up. A, F sharp. That doesn't work either. C sharp A, F sharp D. I'm not sure if I can answer that question because there are so many different combinations those notes can happen in, Hyper Joe. Unless it's something like that. That maybe makes most musical sense. I'll put it on screen in that combination and see if it helps you. So D, B, 2 and 3, A, F sharp, 1 and 5, C sharp, A, maybe 2 and 4 for D, B, and then 2, 4. So 2, 4, 1, 5, 2, 4, 1, 5. But that only works for that particular combination of pitches in that order if we're going from third to sixth, third to sixth. Hyper Joe, if that doesn't answer your question, try me again. Miguel, I have dealt with a wrist injury. I went in quite a bit of depth about it on the last stream, so I won't go that deep into it again today, but I did have a ganglion cyst in my left wrist that developed in my preparation for undergrad auditions, to the point where I couldn't even make a fist. I couldn't clench my fingers in the hand. It was so inflamed and caused so much pain. And I had to take about a month and a half off of practicing in like December, I think. December before auditions started in February. And yeah, that wasn't a great time to not be able to practice. And it has made me super, super aware of what caused the problem and how to avoid it myself and with students of mine. And it was overuse through too much tension. That's what caused it. So let's see. And Road C, we'll stop with this question. This is a good wrapping up question. You say your dad told you earlier today that you'd be better off as a composer rather than a performer. You couldn't see yourself in a big competition. And then what do you think suits you for your future as a pianist, composing or performing? Road C, performing performing is a really difficult job. Hyper Joe, I'm going to answer your question quickly, and I'll go back to Rhodesy because his answers can take a little longer. Hyper Joe, yes. If you want to share a little snippet of something, you can. There's my email address is listed in the description below the video, and you can email there. It's sometimes hard for me to grab an email in the middle of a stream. So if you have a particular question, and you can email, if you need a graphic or like a PDF included, if you email me before we start, I will definitely answer it, and I'll make sure it gets answered, and I'll have the reference. That's always true. And if Antonio is still here, he knows he likes to send in questions ahead of time, and sometimes I forget. So if I ever forget to answer your question that you've emailed about, just mention it because it is not intentional. It just slips my mind when I'm in the middle of things here. Sindin, thanks for tuning in, and I hope that I hope we can connect about the Mozart. It would be great to work on that a bit together. Rhodesy, going back to performing versus composing. If you're a performer, you have to. I mean, there's a lot we could talk about, but you have to be able to present well, technically well, and execute precisely enough on a day-to-day basis to be a performer, especially of the classical repertoire. Slightly maybe less strict requirements if you want to perform some other stuff. But today, your technique has to be so incredible if you want to have a chance at making a living as a classical performer. That's very, very hard to do. As any type of performer, let's say you want to also compose and perform your own work, you have to have the type of personality that just doesn't care what other people think if they have a negative opinion of you. Because you are going to be putting yourself out there so often and so much, and everybody in the world has an opinion about something, and in our current age, people are less and less shy about sharing their opinion, even if it's negative. And so you have to have a really thick skin. You really can't let anything bother you. You can't take anything personally. You have to, hold on to the positive comments that you get from people and, let those be meaningful and push everything else aside. I've told this story before, but, one of my first albums, when it got reviewed in American Record Guide, the reviewer said in one sentence that my playing was like Horowitz. It reminded him of Horowitz's playing, which is great. And I still use that sentence in bios here and there. And then the very next sentence, he said, like, my interpretations were they wouldn't be for everybody. Not everybody would enjoy them. And I thought that's a really interesting thing to put side by side, because not only did I feel put down, but he also put down Horowitz in a like manner. And, but you can see how those two things, that album was released almost 20 years ago. And I still remember those two lines from my first review. And there's a lot of stuff that sticks with you. So you have to learn how to not let that kind of stuff bother you. As a composer, life is also difficult, and just in a different way. Sindin. I don't remember who that is. So Rhodesy, as a composer, you're a little bit more insulated in that, most of the people you're going to be working with directly are going to be musicians that are interested in performing your work, or you're going to be performing it yourself. Oh, Einaudi. Okay, thanks for sharing, Sindin. Just for the record, I don't hate his music. I like it quite a lot. I want everybody to have a broad music education. That's my goal. And he is part of it, I think. And yeah, I would just as much, in my video about people needing to play more Bach, if people only want to play Bach, I would just as adamantly say you need to play Einaudi as I say to people that only play Einaudi, you need to play Bach. Because it's all about having that wide experience. So, June, you're saying that too. Performance reviews at work. Yeah. So that stuff comes from a lot of different places. So Rhodesy, if you're a composer, you're going to be more surrounded by people that like your stuff to begin with because they're going to agree to perform it. But there's still going to be reviews. That kind of stuff will still happen. Classical music composition today I'm glad to see that things are kind of turning a corner and we're getting more and more tonal composition again, even coming out of schools. I think that's really cool. I think that it's great that you don't have to, it seems like, I have not been in the environment in a while, but it seems like you don't have to do something that no one has ever done before and come up with your own vocabulary of theory in order to graduate a program and then write something that nobody has any clue what you're trying to say with. So the hardest part I see in composers' lives today is that commissions, where you get paid to write something, commissions are few and far between. And it is a real struggle to get people. There are so many people studying composition, and there are so many people that are quite good at it. And there are relatively few performers who are out playing publicly, that the opportunities to get your work performed are difficult to come by. And that's part of the reason why I have chosen the path that I've chosen for myself, which is I walk in both worlds. I perform, and I like performing, and I play some of the classical repertoire. If a concert presenter asks for it in particular, I'll offer a couple pieces, but my programs are full of my own work, and my other YouTube channel is full of my work, my compositions, my arrangements, my transcriptions. And that's the balance that I really enjoy. And it's something that I can see myself doing for a long, long, long time. No matter what anybody says, I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. My audiences, I know, have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I am not judged solely publicly on one thing or the other thing. And so there's always a refuge I have in music that says, if a performance of a piece of classical music, let's say, if it didn't go super well or I thought it could have been better, I can still immerse myself in music by writing something, and maybe writing something about the experience. Great. And then vice versa. When I write music, there'll be plenty of people that don't care for things that I write, and that's fine. And I can still enjoy studying the classical repertoire because it's just so full and varied, and I will, given a lifetime, I will not have experienced as much of the repertoire as I want to. But I'll try. Jess, that's a cool statement that you got a compliment in the late 90s, made you feel great then, and it still does today. Well, thanks, Rhodesy, about evening lights. I appreciate that. It's also really nice. I'll just throw this out there. It's really nice if you have a place to like a place where you're a regular performer, where people like you. That can really help. It can help to get nerves out, and it can help to experience music and experience performance in what feels like a relatively safe place, where, if you play for these people a lot, they usually they appreciate it, and they let you know that they do, and it's not a foreign crowd. I mean, one of the hardest things, especially the way I give performances, I talk to the audience quite a bit. It's not just a recital where I come out and play and leave, etc. I try to have kind of a conversation with the audience. And when it's in a place that I have not performed before and the audience is full of strangers, to me personally, it takes most of the first half for everybody to get comfortable. And that's its own unique experience. So, and then once that happens and the mood lightens, and then we have so much more fun. Second half for sure is great fun. But the first half can be, if I'm telling stories or a joke here or there or something that relates to the music I'm going to be playing, and you just get like dead-faced stares from the people you're talking to, it's very difficult to know what to do with that in the moment. But usually what's happened with me is they start, as we get to know each other over the first 20 or 30 minutes of a performance, everybody just starts to let go a little bit. So on that note, we're going to wrap up today. If you haven't given this video a thumbs up, please do. And if you did already give it a thumbs up, click the button twice. Because then, the thumbs up will stay there. If you didn't already on the channel today, a performance video came out earlier this morning. It's of one of my arrangements, speaking of what we just talked about. So if you haven't checked that out, there is a new performance video on the channel today. There's going to be a new video coming out on Friday that is different than things that I've talked about here before. So I hope you'll check that out Friday morning. And thanks, Rob. Thanks for staying here the whole time. C Drive 2, Nancy, Seth, Alexis. It was great to hear you play. Everybody, remember you can send in a performance following the information down in the description. Well, C Drive, if you've already liked the video, click it twice, because then you'll unlike it and re-like it. Anyway, I appreciate all of you being here. We will have another stream in 2 weeks. I will see all of you, hopefully all of you, and a few new friends again in the next stream. All right, everybody. Take care. I'll see you